Hello and welcome to Conscious Curiosities, where we unlock the wisdom of the universe which lies within us. I'm Maria Luz, your host, a certified hypnotist, astrologer, and psychic medium. Today's topic is Empower Yourself to Practice Astrology, Frequently Asked Questions. In this episode, I'm going to answer some questions which may come up as you start your own astrology learning. Last week, I introduced ideas to empower you to do an astrology practice of your own in a way that fits you. And so you may want to stop and go back and listen to that episode before continuing on. And this week, it's simply a list of FAQs to save you maybe some Googling time. And I think it'll be a pretty brief episode. So the first question, why does my birth chart look different depending on which app or which astrologer produces it? Your birth chart was likely produced with a different house system each of those times, which results in some of the planets living in a different house in one chart versus the other. The most common systems, I think, are the Placidus system, which is what is called a quadrant-based system, and it typically results in the houses being of unequal sizes. So if you're looking at that wheel, you'll notice that not all of the triangles are the same size. And then there's the other common one is called whole sign, and that essentially forces all of the houses to separate the signs equally. So you won't see those unequal little pieces of the pie sizes. And you can tell because the whole sign, it'll force your first house to begin at 0 degrees of whatever your rising sign is. So even if, say, you are a Gemini rising and you know your ascendant is at 13 degrees Gemini, if it's whole sign, it's going to start at 0 degrees Gemini versus Placidus or another quadrant house system will just begin your house at that exact degree at 13 degrees. And most astrologers practice in the system that is the one that was used by their teacher. So, and their teacher probably uses the one used by their teacher, and so on down the lineage. So they are generally tied to the lineage of astrology. For your personal use, you can start with, one method. And as you learn astrology, if you find that the placement of the planets doesn't feel right to you, and most notably that would be because your sun in one chart is in the 7th house, which is the house of relationships, etc. And in another house, and in another chart system, it's in the 6th house, which is the house of routines and tasks, your daily work, your health. Those are pretty different topics and areas of life. So you may find that the themes of your life really fall into one or the other. And that may be the system that you want to use. And the same thing goes for your moon. You could switch, to a different system, again, that feels more accurate. However, I wouldn't advocate for switching back and forth or creating some hybrid or something. It gets too confusing especially when you start throwing in transits and other additional astrology tools that we use to look at things. So how do astrologers become astrologers? Is there a license or something? There is no standard or licensure to practice astrology in the US, and I'm just guessing this is because of our history of condemning practices that were not part of the Christian mainstream, but I am not completely certain. Again, just guessing there. And I think I even heard that some states continue to have laws on the books about using methods to divine informations or some things that they put in the category of occult practices. However, there are various associations and schools that are organized around certain lineages of astrology, and some of these offer different certifications or credentials. So I've been working on my certification through the Jeffrey Wolf Green Association of Evolutionary Astrologers. Hopefully I will finish that up this year. I'm very close. And others that I'm aware of are the Kepler College and the Forest Center for Evolutionary Astrology. However, a lot of astrologers don't pursue these types of credentials or certifications because they've just, learned on the job from years of being just enveloped in different books and now podcasts and things like that as the way that they've learned before they even started, reading other people's charts. I'm also a registered member with the Organization for Professional Astrology, which otherwise known as the OPA, which has its own code of ethics. So I've put links for those things in the show notes in case you want to see what they look like. And from what I've experienced, it's not exactly a way to make easy money. So I don't really see much benefit in, say, phony people opening up an astrology business if they're not skilled. I mean, there's a lot of competition, and the income for the work that you do and all of the, the study time that you do on your own, it really doesn't amount to a whole lot unless you're really busy or you're doing a lot of group offerings. So for that reason, most people, supplement. Either they're still doing a day job, or like me, they're trying to, put together multiple modalities in one business, and astrology is complementary to those other things. The next question is, I don't identify with my sun sign, or it could be my moon sign or my rising sign. Why? This could be a pretty big topic, but here are a few possible reasons. Perhaps you're just familiar with only those popular stereotypes of the sign, the different memes, maybe just those old-fashioned magazine or newspaper sun sign horoscopes, which were, written by who knows. And that's very different than understanding like the full energy of that archetype of the sign. And the other thing is that maybe you were conditioned not to display or even to have feelings that maybe fell under the archetype of the sign. So for example, many women who are Aries or Leo suns are taught to tone that down. And men who are born, Cancer or Pisces suns are taught not to be so sensitive. So these are real because, we know how powerful conditioning is. So that's why I say this is kind of a big topic. There may be other things, in your life that you've toned down along with your sun sign or your moon sign or rising. And then there's also something called a progress chart, which is a way to understand the subtle changes to our own birth chart over time. And it could be that your progress sun or your progress moon are now in signs that are different from where they were in your birth chart. The next question is, can I look into my partner's birth chart to understand them better? And the answer is, before looking at anyone else's birth chart, you should have their consent. And most likely, if you are asking for information like the time of their birth, and the location, you would probably be close enough where you can ask them consent, and they would hopefully be fine with it. An exception might be, if you have minor children, and then parents who look into astrology find it really helpful to understand their children's charts, because they can actually support their growth better. And then, maybe they won't grow up to be as messed up as the rest of us. Okay. Next one is, how much should I expect to pay for a birth chart reading? And I would say, the average seems to be about $175 to $350 for maybe an hour to an hour and a half. You'll notice my cost is quite a bit lower because I am newer. So I am trying to build up my practice, and therefore am charging less. Although, as I say that, it's been a while, so I probably will increase next year for sure. Okay, the next question: what should I expect to learn in a reading? The answer: if this is your first reading, your big three will be reviewed in detail. Again, that's your sun, your moon, and your rising, including an explanation of how those energies may play out in your life. And then from there, it really depends on the individual astrologer and on the specific topics that interest you. And I would suggest to have maybe one or two main areas that you would like input on, such as, since I mentioned them earlier, relationships or like daily work or career. Other things would be like your home life. And then just know that the time runs out really quickly, so feel empowered to redirect the astrologer as needed. And then finally, just what other things would be helpful to know. I think it's helpful to know if you are what we call in the biz an eclipse person, which generally means that you were born within a week or so of an eclipse. And I am one of these. And when I look back at key turning points in my life, I can see they were often near an eclipse or near the degree where that eclipse near my birth happened. So it's good to know, because you may actually feel kind of weird around the eclipses. So I think it's kind of a nice heads up if you know that in advance. And then another thing to understand is that we all have all 12 signs of the zodiac within us. I know I've said that before. And some may feel harder to access within us. And that may actually be a hint that we want to intentionally learn about those energies, so that, like muscles, we can exercise them, because they all have really unique strengths. And so we may as well develop them while we are here in Earth School. And that wraps up this brief episode. You could, if you want more, go back and look at some of my earlier episodes and take your pick as to what topic you want to dive into a little bit deeper. If you do have any questions, which I didn't cover, or you have feedback on any of this, feel free to email me, info@marialuz.online, and you are now empowered to continue to be consciously curious about practicing astrology your own way. I will include in the show notes the references from last week in case you missed them. I also always include a coupon code for listeners, and I would so appreciate it if you would leave a review or share this podcast with a friend. I appreciate you, and I will see you next time. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.